Kristin Graziano was sworn in as Charleston County Sheriff in January. Today, I talk one-on-one with her about what she's accomplished thus far for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Sheriff Kristin Graziano, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, you're very welcome. I want to pick up where Carolyn Murray left off. I was at Publix yesterday getting some lunch, and I was listening to the podcast you all did together. And I'm wondering this, Sheriff, from the time that you were inaugurated in January to right now, who is Kristin Graziano?
When you ask me this every time, and I'm going to tell you nothing has changed. I'm very, very busy, but I was very busy before. So we're just busy making some great changes, I think, that are coming in not only in the community but in the agency, and it's just been incredibly busy. There aren't enough hours in the day.
Yeah, that's exactly right. What changes are you making in the community, and what changes are you making within the Sheriff's Department?
So the change in the community is that we are in the community, and we're going to continue to involve ourselves in the community, not just as on a part-time basis, but that's part of our growth is to be involved with the community and help them be the problem solvers for their own neighborhoods, their own communities. But really, the big change that has happened here, as you well know, the 30 minutes after I was sworn in, I swore in a chief deputy, a general counsel, and a new director of the detention center, all women, 2 African American women, and we are. In addition to that, on Friday, we promoted a new chief deputy who is of Middle Eastern descent. And we have also promoted an LGBTQ person to captain, an African American man. So we're starting at the place where decisions are made. We're starting to look like the community. And that was really, really important to me to not only look like the community we police, but to make sure that we were looking like that across the board in the county.
Now, you talked earlier about growth. Where is the growth within the Charleston County Sheriff's Office right now?
You said the growth within the Charleston County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it was really important for us we have positions that are vacant, and we have positions that are going to remain vacant until we identify people in the agency that can be put in those positions. It was important for us not to rush and to identify those folks, mentor them, train them so that they can be successful. Because the whole purpose of being in an organization, especially with the time commitment that people have been here, is to make sure we don't just put them somewhere and say good luck, like we've done in the past. We want to make sure they're successful. Their success is our success. So we have to create an environment from the inside that allows for that growth potential from an agency that looks like the community they serve. So we're kind of doing that all at once. Day one, I eliminated the ICE agreement that specifically allowed our agency to be complicit with racial profiling in our brown communities. And this creates an opportunity for law enforcement to begin that process that I talked about before, of reconciliation to the communities that we serve.
And you talk about identification, Sheriff. Let me ask you this, because obviously $84 million is the budget that you have for the Sheriff's Department. What's needed right now in the budget, and what has been taken out of the budget to get what you need?
So everyone will tell you that it's not enough money, because really the people that work here that are dedicated to serving the community are not have traditionally been underpaid and overworked. So it's important for us to look out for the people that are doing the work, the boots on the ground. So part of that is looking at our pay structure and really focusing on on a needs base. What is it that we need, and what do we have to get these people where they should be, both financially and emotionally and training wise. So a lot of our funding, most of it is salaries anyway, but a smaller portion of that is the training that we go through. And we're trying to enhance some efforts in de-escalation. We're trying to enhance efforts in racial equity training, and racial bias and profiling, that kind of thing. So that takes money. And so I've said before, I'm not asking for more. We just need to look at our resources, reallocate that funds to accomplish the goals of the agency, and that's to meet our core values.
What are your core values?
Love it. I love that you asked that. So that was a priority for me coming in. Our core values begin. The acronym is PRIDE. It's public trust, taking responsibility for our actions, being an inclusive and accepting agency, enhancing diversity, and treating others equally. And those are all people equally. And that goes for within our walls. So I started a series of diversity forums here in the county. I have one this afternoon focused on women because it is Women's History Month.
Sure.
And this is just an avenue for us to open up that dialogue, to have that discussion that nobody wants to have. Our first one was with the LGBTQ community. The second one was during Black History Month for our brothers and sisters of color. But more than that, it's just the beginning. It's not; these are not going to stop. This is just an avenue. It's a start to fixing us, to taking responsibility for what we've done and what we've been responsible for in the past. Really reconciling those differences and being more inclusive and having these hard discussions that people don't want to have. And I think it's incumbent upon us to start with us, fix us, so that we can better go out and serve our community.
What are those discussions that people are just afraid to talk about right now when it comes to law enforcement and diversity?
All of those things I mentioned. I can tell you in the first forum, people didn't know how to address, say, a gay, a lesbian. They didn't know how to address their partner, and they didn't want to be treated differently. But our straight allies that were in those meetings were saying, "Well, we don't know what to say." So we were having these discussions that sound uncomfortable, but for them it was just like just be normal, just be normal to us, and call it what it is. We're not trying to be different. We're just trying to be equal. And so having those discussions, and it created a lot. At first they're kind of quiet, but once people start opening up, there's a lot of laughter, and then there's some serious questions that are asked. And the same thing with the second, and I anticipate similar circumstances in the third forum. But our whole dynamic, the whole reason, the whole purpose for being there is how can we be better? And that's our focus. Like, how can we do what we're doing, be more inclusive, and how can we do it better? And so these are the discussions that we're having. We will continue these forums, but they might be subject-based next time. Let's have these discussions. What's going on in the community that we need to engage people inside our walls? Because again, we have to fix us. We have to understand that we all have it bias, and we have to figure out now how to work with that and be more inclusive and accepting of those within our walls, so that we can better serve the people outside the walls.
And what serious questions, sheriffs, are you asking in these diversity forums?
So the very first thing I say is, look, this isn't about me coming to talk to you. This is about us opening up and engaging. And it's important that they know that this is a safe space, that what is said in these walls will stay in these walls. Obviously, we want to create that environment where people feel free to say what's bothering them, or what we think we can do better. But we carry that forward, and we have this opportunity, this unique opportunity within a safe space. Now, what are you going to do going forward to make sure that we continue to do the things we say we're going to do? So it gives that buy-in and that accountability, which is really important to the people that are actually doing the work. So, my only question is, what is your experience, and how can we do better? And what do we need to work on? What do we need to work on as administrators? What do we need to work on as just colleagues working in the same field of work? And one of the very first policies that I implemented week one when I was here was the duty to intervene. And when you see something not just say something, do something. So that part of these forums are discussing, what does that mean? What does it mean to intervene when you see something, and not just say something? You have to do something. So what does that mean? So we have, a lot of examples that people will come up with, and we'll have these discussions. And I think it's really important. It's real healthy for the culture.
And let me pivot to that. Yes or no? Ban chokeholds and strangleholds.
Yeah, we don't train that, Quintin. We're not going to practice that. I've never practiced that as law enforcement.
Require de-escalation.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with the verbal judo skills and de-escalation. I think it should be mandated. We're doing it internally.
Require exhausting all reasonable means before resorting to deadly force.
Well, I think that's the standard. That's the standard that we have to live by.
Ban shooting at moving vehicles.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree with that 100%. Again, we talked about this before the election. You have to weigh the forces being used against the public interest. And if somebody's in a vehicle and they're getting ready to mow down, people on a sidewalk, I think force has to be used to save lives, not to take them.
Require use of force continuum.
Oh, I agree. We already have that. I mean,
Okay.
we do that. We practice that.
Require comprehensive reporting of force.
I agree with that. Yes.
Require verbal warnings before shooting.
Again, I think you have to weigh the interest of the community and the safety of others when you have a situation I just talked about. If somebody's in a vehicle getting ready to mow people over, I don't think if you say stop, it's the police or I'll shoot, they're going to hear that in a vehicle. So.
And random roadblocks stop citizens who really haven't done anything wrong. Would that method continue in your administration?
Random roadblocks? I don't think we do roadblocks. I think you're talking about stop and frisk. I think that's what that legislation is talking about.
Okay.
Now, I think that's a great investigative tool for law enforcement. Yeah, I think we could use better discretion when we do it, particularly if we're investigating a crime. But I would not ban it. No, I think it's a necessary tool to keep officers safe.
And in the sheriff's office, have you considered suspending paid administrative leave for a deputy under investigation?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think that's part of the standard. I mean, because they are innocent until proven guilty, right? And when we conduct investigations, because we put them in that position by virtue of their authority, yeah, I think it's still the standard. Now, if something's egregious and blatant, and through our investigation that becomes evident, then I think we need to take immediate action. I don't agree to wait for a criminal investigation to finish before we do that. But we've had those discussions, and those are some things that we've agreed that we're going to do our investigation internally as well as waiting for a criminal investigation, because we don't do the criminal investigation. That could take months.
Right.
But if it's that egregious, then we need to take action. And if we feel like policy has been violated or law has been violated in terms of how our investigation goes, we have to take action.
And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But speaking of money, would you be in favor of withholding pensions and don't rehire deputies involved in excessive force cases?
In excessive force cases, yeah, I think that unfortunately the standards have been, when somebody gives 25, 30 years of their life, and one use of force case can jeopardize their entire livelihood. Yeah, I would say that I'm not opposed to doing it if it's a criminal violation and they're found guilty under criminal law, but I think just to withhold, contributions that they've already made into their own system, that's a civil matter. It's a matter of finances. It's not really your money. It's not the state's money. It's their money. So I think you would have a hard time justifying that.
How would you release a public list of all lethal and less lethal armaments?
Armaments?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you want to know? I mean, we have lethal, that's lethal. I mean, it's no secret. We have tools of the trade that we use to do our job, and people that use them are highly trained to use them. I personally have shot less lethal several times, and it's saved lives. So and resolved situations pretty peacefully. But yeah, I don't mind releasing what those are.
And would you limit the sheriff's office procurement of military-style weapons and equipment?
Yeah, I think it's clear that when as I told you before, that we don't. If that's a 1033 program you're referring to, we don't rely on that as much as smaller agencies that don't have the resources that we have rely on it. So so there's no need for that. Now, what I will tell you is we have a detention center that needs a kitchen upgrade, and if 1033 equipment will allow us to get new ovens and cooking equipment and tools of the trade to feed our residents, then I'm not opposed to it. But for military style, we don't have anything on 1033. We do have rifles, a few rifles left. We're slowly getting those out of our inventory, but in fact, they're almost all gone. But I would limit it to those types of things that I think are need-based. That would be a huge purchase for the county.
And when you look at the inventory for the Charleston County Sheriff's Office, what stands out in your mind?
We have a lot of assets, and we have people trained to use those assets. But I would, I've personally gone through the inventory list, and we've really reduced the number of stuff just laying around. And when we do that, old boats that we don't use anymore, we put that back under Gov Deals, and it goes to the general fund. I'm all for that because that funding can be used for other entities. The county's been very good to give us what we need, and we can justify what we need. What we can't do is justify a bunch of stuff laying around that we don't have a need for anymore. So I like to make sure that whatever we have, we're using, and if we're not using it, we're getting rid of it so that we can either bring in new stuff and get that stuff out so that the county can sell it and put it to the general fund.
Now, how much money is in the general fund?
Oh, I have no idea. That's a county's budget. That's not our budget. That's Charleston County's budget.
Now, in your budget, what new stuff do you want to bring to the sheriff's office?
So it's interesting. I just took a tour this morning of a DNA lab that the city just built on Bees Ferry,
Right.
and it is absolutely stunning. And that has been I can't understand the size of this agency in the region why we don't have a regional DNA lab. So those are in the talks right now. It's in my 5-year plan to have a regional DNA lab up and running. It's also in my 5-year plan to have our own shooting range where officers can go. So we're not going to a public entity and paying money for that, and that we can always train with firearms because it's our biggest liability. So we always have access to that. So those are two really important things that we're working on my end.
Oh, yeah. And let me get back to some more questions. What appropriate safety equipment and training would you use to protect deputies and the community from harm?
Quintin, we have been blessed with the good equipment in Charleston County. I mean, our officers are equipped with items to protect themselves as well as protect the public. We've been blessed with vehicles. I think where we can improve is our driving skills, learning to be more defensive in driving. I think that's a safety issue for the community as well as for our officers. And again, to continue the training and enhance the training that we already do so that they're very proficient. So everything they do when it comes to talking to somebody or having to go hands-on, God forbid, if they have to do that they're utilizing the best tools in their tool belt, so to speak, so that we can minimize injury or God forbid death to potential people out in the public.
And this might be a complicated question, but would you actually restructure the county's emergency response system, that is, to provide appropriate resources to staff other than law enforcement officers who can respond to calls rather than mental health emergencies or homeless individuals, for instance?
We've looked at a couple of models around the country, and you're talking about the crisis response for mental patients. And we have access here to mobile crisis, which is a great tool for us. And they do come out on a lot of our calls. In addition to that, we have embedded a mental health professional in our building. So not only do we use that person for calls for service in the community, and they've been on calls involving mental health in the community, but we use them internally too. so it's always good to have that access because we're all human. we have as humans we don't always get it right. We make mistakes, but the beauty is that we have the ability and the resources internally to work through that. And I love having somebody on staff. I know that there has been mention in some areas around the country that have a response team for mental health. I will tell you, I'm not in favor of law enforcement transporting mental patients from hospital to hospital. I don't think that's our job. Unfortunately, by legislature, we're required to do it right now. But that's something I would advocate for because we are not trained at the level that mental health professionals are trained at to transport folks like that. We're trained to de-escalate to a certain level and to safely get people transported to where they need to be. And I think from a hospital to a hospital is not our responsibility. I never want to see somebody transported from a hospital to our facility, a jail facility. And I don't think that's right either. But those are things that I think we can improve upon and that I would definitely advocate for not being responsible for.
How aggressively does the sheriff office enforce lower level infractions that do not need to be actually criminalized?
Be more specific. I mean, I think it's situational. We have a standing order, so to speak, that you can't criminalize you can arrest for certain offenses, but what we've said is we've Quintin, always had the ability to use our discretion. And I think part of, part of the discussions that have been going on over the last 6, 8, 10 months, year at that, has been, these lower level, a lot of people in our jail, in our facility here, the detention center, were pretrial. Everyone's pretrial, but they were in here for lower level offenses like possession of marijuana. Well, that's just absurd to me because these, to mandate that you can't bring somebody in for that is absurd when we've always had the ability not to do it. So I think enhancing that the ability to use that discretion and understand that it's okay to write somebody tickets for these things. I wasn't trained like that when I came here, by the way. Right. When I came here 19 years ago, they locked people up for joints, and I thought that was crazy because we had never done that back where I came from in Virginia. It was rare. It was really rare, and I thought, what is the big deal? There's no danger here. There's no threat. And why are you putting them in jail to prove? I didn't get it. But that's just how they train. So now we have to retrain folks not to do that and to use that discretion.
And, I might be redundant with this question, but where does all this lead the politics of policing discretion?
A recent discusof what? Of lower level offenses?
Yes,
or
ma'am.
Legalization of marijuana? I mean, there's a lot of different things, but all of that's relative. Like I think when the day comes, it is coming when weed is legalized, that will alleviate a lot of our backlogs in the system, and it's going to start making our professionals focus more on the totality of the circumstances they're in instead of using the weed as an excuse to investigate further. So I think it makes us better. I think it makes us stronger. So we're legitimately not statistics driven to see how many arrests we can make. We're quality control now, and we become this entity that we're focused on getting it right, and we're focused on doing a thorough investigation if a crime is afoot, so that we're getting the evidence documented. So if there's somebody actually out there committing serious crimes, that we have the ability to investigate that, and we do a good job at it.
Now,
So
when you look at
there's a lot of ways you can do that.
oh, sure. And when you look at that backlog, what sticks out in your mind right now?
The backlog of right now, what sticks out in my mind is the unbelievable amount of cases that are pending in the lower level courts because courts have not been open.
Right.
We are actively working to get people that have been in our facility for 90 days or less, or 90 days or more, that have just are awaiting a simple pre-trial, lower level offense. We're actively working to get them out. They should not be in our system. And so as our detention population comes down with the courts closing, it's here with the courts closing, it's gone from here to here. Now we need to get it back down and eventually work our way, so that we're putting processes in place to get folks out. And that's been a headache, a little bit of a headache. But it takes cooperation from the courts. They just opened this week, but we've already purged quite a few cases, and are trying to get that even lower.
And what is the current jail population there on Lee's Avenue?
It's about 730, 740, and then about 46 juveniles.
And 45. And what will you do to keep jail beds from getting filled just because they're actually there?
Yeah, so Quintin, there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes when it comes to the jail population. We can no longer use COVID as an excuse not to do what we need to be doing to help people get out. So we have reinvented and reopened our programming in the juvenile facility as well as the adult facility, and really are just working to enhance programs, educational-based programs for the adults, identifying a space right now to create a dorm-style living so that folks that are in there are getting educational services to help them when they get out. That is not that's a responsibility that I take seriously. I think, look, I've told you this before, if you treat people like inmates, they're going to act like inmates. If you treat them with respect and dignity and dignify them a little bit, they're going to act that way. So a lot of what we've done has been a visible change, especially with the juvenile population. And we are working now. I brought in a program director who's been specifically working with the juveniles. Now that expands to the adults actually next week. So once we create that dorm style living and identify folks to go in that, the idea is to give them hope and skills. And so once they get out, they will have the opportunities that they haven't had maybe necessarily when they were out. Maybe it would cause them to be there to begin with. So it's not everybody. It's we're focused on the age group of 27 down because we know that we still have the ability. Science tells us we have the ability to change behaviors. So that's our goal. Let me give you an example about changing behaviors. Just Friday, we hosted our first ever chess tournament at the juvenile detention center. And when I was talking to the kids and watching that, they were so hyper focused on this tournament. And chess is a thinking man's game. And one of the kids, I can't say their name because they're juvenile, is in there for a really serious crime. And prior to this chess tournament, prior to Radia going in and doing the programming with them, we had fights, 11 fights a day maybe, and through a weekend. And it was this, particular person or persons that were the instigators, the leaders of the pack. And when the facility is not set up to be separate, they're all together. Mm. So we identified, when it was identified, we also identified changing that behavior with that person or that group and having them put that energy into something positive. So this person became the leader of the chess team. He became the person he knew how to play chess. He watched Life of a King And I had not seen that movie. If you haven't, you need to. I had not seen that movie either. It's based on a true story of a guy that was incarcerated, and when he left incarceration, opened up a chess club to get kids off the street and to start thinking about their life moves, and every move they make is a reflection of their life. And when you hear him talk about what he thinks that chess game is, he's the king, his mom is the queen, and these guys that that are no good for him are the pawns, so they're expendable. And when you start hearing it in that language, and then he's teaching all these other people to play chess, it was moving. I mean, it was incredible to watch, and to see these kids who are in there for pretty serious offenses reach across the table and shake hands with the person because they got beat, and say, okay, I got it next time. Next time it'll be different. But they're writing their moves down. And when I asked him, what this means to him, he said, well, every piece is a move in my life. He said, I could be king one day and just make the wrong move and I get knocked out. And he said, so it's my job to make sure that I stay protected so that I can direct people around me to make the right moves so they don't get knocked out. And I thought, wow, that is really profound. So it's just little things like that, changing that behavior of folks who maybe have been misdirected in their lives and needed redirection. And this is just a part of it. It's awesome to be a part of it.
Yes, indeed. And let me ask you this: you probably answered it in the last question? How do you determine required sworn civilian staffing ratios to support calls for services, strategic initiatives, divisional goals, and objectives, and the safe and effective management of the jail's inmate population?
So we have a lot of civilian staff, and I think that's what you're referring to. Civilian staff that help run. They're a huge part of it. So part of me coming in here and being more inclusive was to include them in our strategic planning and our values. And so we have formed focus groups throughout, not just the detention center, but also both sides. We've merged a couple things to be more streamlined, more efficient between the two. So we have that open line of communication. But what we've done is included the civilians on these committees. Normally, that hasn't been done in the past. The people at the top have been making the decisions. So just give you an example of some of the groups that we have a leadership mentor team, a hiring committee and policy, a strategic planning / value statement, somebody identifying shooting range options, policing practices and culture committee, a critical incident review board, a promotions board, a regional coalition anti-violence task force, a technology group. So we have all these folks that from every aspect of the agency, from the bottom to the top, and all the groups are my main requirement was that we be diverse and that we reach out among the civilian staff too. So those are the examples of some of the things we're doing now on both sides. The detention right now is working on their value statement and their culture group. And so and I've said this before, that's my biggest challenge, changing that culture. But what a better way to do it than to have people that are in it be a part of it, that change. And I always tell people, come work for us, be the change you want to see.
Yes, and I got two more questions for you, Sheriff. Have you conducted a thorough analysis of the growth in Charleston County in both residential, commercial, and population figures?
I have not conducted a thorough analysis. I mean, I'm keeping up with the changing demographics, and I'm keeping up with the changing, what I think is still ongoing gentrification issues. A lot of folks are being pushed out of places that they've called home for hundreds of years, and it's really tough to see. And it's good to see the city and parts of the county making real efforts to protect those communities, and we'll continue to do that. But hopefully, when we start, as we begin our recruitment, we've been recruiting for 2 months. We start casting these targeted nets into these communities because we want them to be a part of this ongoing change that we're experiencing. So that's been important. I know that at the statistics when I first came in, there's 54 prior to COVID, 54 residents a day moving to Charleston County. That was pre-COVID. I don't think
Right.
it's slowed down, Quintin. I think it's actually increased, and it's disheartening almost to go downtown anymore and see all these high rises going up and these communities just being swallowed by developers. But on the same side, same token, that it's also it's great to see some of the efforts that are preserving the communities, the downtown area, and especially in our county. So we'll be a part of that. I mean, I think it's important to keep that in mind, that we have to include them in our focus and our strategic plans going forward.
Now, with that recruiting, what are those target nets right now?
So our closely targeted nets, we have a 4% Hispanic population, about a 35% and increasing African American population, and a even smaller Asian Pacific Island population. So those are targeted nets that we're casting into communities because we need that representation inside our walls.
And have you conducted?
And I'll tell you,
yes, ma'am.
doing that, when I say targeted nets, I've always said we need to meet them where they are. So not having them come to us, but going to them, and that's what I mean by that.
Sure.
We do application fairs, not job fairs. We actually go out with the laptops or the Chromebooks or whatever you call them, whatever they are these days, and we actually help them fill out the application, because a lot of these places we found, and we know through just being in the community, they don't have access. So we bring that access to them. We go to them. We offer these opportunities, and we help them get them.
And have you also, I don't know if you've probably done this, but have you conducted a thorough analysis of ethnic and age population here in Charleston County?
Yeah, again, that's part of what we've done, and nobody's ever looked at the Asian Pacific Islander population. We are, because it's a part of our community.
Sure.
And so so we've looked at all that, and we're trying to be representative equally to what our community looks like. And that's the goal.
And I want to go back to the podcast you did with Carolyn Murray a couple of days ago, but you said that obviously law enforcement was a calling for you at a young age. What would you tell a young Kristin Graziano right now?
Quintin, I would say that a young me, you'll be told no a lot, and because no is the easy thing for people in charge to often say, because doing what's fair and what's right is sometimes hard. So use that as your motivation to never ever accept mediocrity as your standard. Set your standards higher than what you're receiving, and always work to exceed those expectations. Be honest, be fair, be kind, and move forward with the understanding that there's never a wrong time to do what is right. That's what I would tell them.
And you also told Carolyn, look, listen, it's all about accountability, transparency, and bringing our community back together. Let me ask you another simplistic question. How do you bring this community back together with accountability and transparency?
Yeah, one step at a time. And we've been listening to the community, and I made this comment yesterday at a forum I was at, and I said, the community needs to be involved in everything we do. When I was elected, I appointed 4 members of the community to be my community transition team. Not for me, for them to understand what we're going through, so they could go to the community and tell them what they saw. We're also including the community in our hiring boards now. We have one going on right now, and also our promotional boards. And that was really important for me. Every step of what we do, where decisions are being made, that we include community members, and that's what we've done, and that's what we will continue to do.
And I know that you told Carolyn, I try to use my experiences to be a better listener with staff. What is your staff telling you right now that you're listening to when it comes to law enforcement?
What I've heard overwhelmingly is they've never had that opportunity. And so it's been really sad and refreshing at the same time that, we're only as good as the people that work with us and for us, and to not listen to them. We have so much potential and an amazing group of professionals that work in this building and around the county. And to not listen to them would be a sin. They have great ideas. Some of them far-fetched, pretty crazy. And I'm, by the way, competing with you because we're going to start our own podcast. And so, but we'll invite you to be a guest. How's
Sure,
that?
that's
So
fine.
we're doing things that are unique, that are reaching out. They're doing that we've never done before, and the creative juices are flowing, and it's really exciting to see.
You also said this too. We as law enforcement are looking into the mirror saying, okay, it wasn't my knee on George Floyd's neck, but it was somebody who looked like me or wore the uniform like me, so we have to take responsibility for it. Obviously, when it comes to the George Floyd incident, you can't take responsibility for that as a local department. But what issues are you looking at within your department locally that you are willing to take responsibility for?
Well, that was part of it. So what I've heard in the law enforcement community is, well, it would have been what it was. It's being spun up, not just in the law enforcement community, but throughout the county. It's being spun up because of the media. And I'm so sick and tired of hearing that because it still happened. It happened, and what you're failing to see is it's still happening. And so until we look at that and address it systemically, it's going to continue to happen. So when we see, that's when I put that duty to intervene policy, I meant it. And so people that don't intervene could get in a lot of trouble by not intervening. So it's that whole culture change, that whole mind change of, it's not us versus them anymore, Quintin. It's never been us versus them. We are the community. Our officers live in this. This is part of the community. So until we start looking at each other like we're a part of the community, we're not a part of the problem. We're part of the solution. And law enforcement, quite frankly, has always been a part of the solution. In this particular instance, that was a problem. We were the problem. And so part of the R in pride is responsibility. It's accepting responsibility for the things that culturally we have done for years. We don't have a great history as law enforcement, but it doesn't mean we have to continue to live that. We can change that. And so I think it's probably the best time to be in law enforcement, because you can be that change that you want to see, that is necessary. And all of my counterparts agree with that.
Sheriff Kristin Graziano, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. It's good to be back, and I will make sure we invite you to our podcast when we get it going.
Sure, I'll talk about renting and living on the east side forever and
That's
more
right.
and more to come.